Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Facebook Live event. We're excited to bring you this second screen experience as a part of CNBC's digital town hall, Invest in You, Ready, Set, Grow, America's Financial Education, that's happening right now over on CNBC.com. CNBC Senior Personal Finance Correspondent Sharon Epperson is sitting down with U.S. Secretary of Education, Dr. Miguel Cardona, and a panel of thought leaders and experts to discuss the current state of financial education and its impact on opportunities for the Hispanic community. And while they're answering your questions about financial education and literacy, we're here today to answer your questions about your personal finances. Joining me now is certified financial planner Louis Barajas. Louis is president and partner at MGO Wealth and a member of the CNBC Financial Advisor Questions Panel. Louis, welcome.
Nice to be with you again, Janet. How are you?
Pretty well, thanks. So let's dive right in. We have a lot of questions today.
Let's do it.
Question one comes from Arindam Nag. He is co-founder and CEO of Sensei, and his question is fintech democratizing personal finance?
It is, right? But it's a double-edged sword. So here's how I've been looking at it, because I've got a lot of clients that are really wealthy, but then I got clients that come from underserved communities, and they're really now into this fintech. And let's take a look at what happened with Robinhood last year, right? And so with working with a lot of my clients that went on Robinhood or with some of these type of fintech apps, they started using it not as an investment tool. They started using it kind of the way they use it when they were buying tickets for the lottery, or they started using it as almost like a gambling app, right? So we have to be really careful how these tools are being used. They're used to democratize, to give everybody access to financial planning, to invest in that where maybe a financial planner wouldn't want you as a client because you're not supposedly big enough. But we need to take a step back and really think through how we're using these apps and whether we're spending time educating ourselves and still learning the fundamentals of investing.
Great. And so our next question is also from somebody at Sensei. It's Doria Lavanino. She's co-founder and also the host of the She Ventures podcast. There's a lot of people in the financial industry here today asking questions. And her question is, how do we ensure people use financial services such as those provided by Klarna and others responsibly?
Right. So if people don't know what Klarna is, it's one of these apps where you can buy stuff kind of like the old layaway kind of plans, right? With no fees and whatever. How to use them responsibly? It goes back to budgeting fundamentals when you're using these type of apps and you're buying products that and you don't want to pay them all and you haven't saved for them. You have to ask that simple question: do I need it or do I want it? Whenever you're going to be buying anything and thinking about whether I need to put a layaway, is you really need to think back again. Ask your question: do I need this product or do I want it? Avoid the wants. Just go to the needs right now, especially if you're really trying to save money for your future and for your family.
Great. So our next question comes from Lawrence Gonzalez. He's a financial literacy educator and federal auditor. He's at the Neighborhood Finance Guy. And his question for you, Louis, is how do Social Security withdrawals work? How can you get your parents on board also with a financial plan?
Right. I think the biggest question regarding this is, when do I take out Social Security, especially right if I'm getting near that age? Because again, we can do what's called full retirement age. Now, you can take out Social Security early at age 62 or age now 66, 67, or at age 70. You really need to take a look at your health. You need to take a look at how much money you need, because what we're trying to do is delay getting that Social Security if we can until age 70, because what's happening is that amount that we're going to be getting goes up every year by 8% until we fully retire. After that, we're just going to get the rates of increase based on what the government tells us every couple of years. So we want to take a look at the budget. We want to take a look at your health. We want to take a look at how much money you need. And then we also want to make sure we're looking at other areas that we're getting. Do we have a pension plan? Do we have other savings? That's how you start really taking a look at the withdrawal rates. How do you get your parents? Well, I think it's just having a conversation about, what do they have? What have they saved? How long do they think their money's going to last? Because again, that's one of the biggest fears that most people have, is how long will their money last and when will they need it? They just can't depend on Social Security. So having an honest conversation with their parents, again, some people aren't ready to have that conversation, but it's, asking, your parents, what have you done and what can I do to help you to prepare?
So Louis, here's a question that's probably near and dear to your heart, and it comes from Beverly Sidors. She is the CEO, and her question is, how do you become financially independent while running a small business?
This is the tricky question, right?
Yeah.
Most small business owners are in this growth phase. They're really taking all the money that they have, all the extra cash, and throwing it back into the business. You kind of have we have to have one eye on the present, keeping track of your business, and one eye on the future for yourself. You have to take a look at what you think your business is going to do. Is it a lifestyle business? Are you just living off the income, or do you plan to sell your business in the future? Anyway, here's a full set of open up a business retirement plan, like basically a SEP or a 401k, a solo 401k.
So our next question comes from Lilith Borzotra. She's the owner of Eve Carnegie Financial. And she wants to know, why is financial education not provided in all 50 states?
Well, that's a really difficult question, because it's an issue of that the leaders in those states don't see financial education as a priority or as a resource for tools that we really need in the 21st century, right? But the thing that we have that's democratized all this, when you don't really have to wait for your state to implement financial education programs, is you've got the internet. You've got wonderful programs that are out there where you can go through the FDIC, the SEC, Jumpstart Organization, all these websites that give you all the information that you possibly need. So as well, it's important for each state to prioritize this financial education. If they haven't done so, don't wait until they do. Be proactive and find the information out there. There's plenty of great information.
So a related question on that same topic comes from Sharon Jones. She's a managing broker at Lanalex. And her question is, as important as financial knowledge is in our lives, why isn't it a required coursework in every public high school curriculum? Every student would benefit. So why aren't we doing this?
Yeah, again, I go back to, it's either lack of priorities, lack of knowledge, not top of mind. Maybe they're using money for other things that they see as more important. It's just all about a priority. And it's I go back to, we shouldn't use that as an excuse now of not being financially educated. The problem, to be quite honest, Janet, is sometimes I think the problem is that we have too much financial literacy, and it's now figuring out, what do I really trust? What information do I really trust, right? I go to the research, I go to CNBC, I go to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I go to a lot of different websites where I know that the information coming from there doesn't have any kind of manipulative type of intentions to sell you any kind of product. So again, it's based on priorities, but again, there's ways to work around that.
So another question about financial education in public schools comes from Claudia Meekins. She's a special education teacher at Lake County High School. And her question is, will additional money be made available for schools with predominantly Hispanic students in districts with high rates of poverty? And that's a very important question.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a real political question, and it's based on the community, the resources available, their priorities, what they see. Again, do we teach people how to fish, or do we give them a fish, right? It's those kind of really thoughtful questions that we have to decide what's the mindset of that community. But there are so many resources from so many wonderful financial education nonprofits that, again, we don't need to depend on them. It'd be nice if they make it a priority and have classes that we can educate them, and also talk about not only just financial literacy, but also financial behaviors, financial mindset tools to really educate these communities. I've been working in these communities the last 30 years. And I also, not only do I bring financial literacy to these communities, but we also talk about financial mindset tools as to what, how we can overcome poverty and also leave wealth, over generations.
So our next question comes from another special education teacher, and this is Timberly Bryson in Gwinnett County Public Schools. And the question is, I would like to gain information on how I can invest so that I'll have enough money for retirement. That's a question a lot of us have.
Yeah. There's, again, I hate to throw everything back to, the University of Google, but you really do need information on investing. But what's happened is that most investments have become basically pretty much, when I say democratized, meaning that they've basically some of these companies like Vanguard have created funds for your retirement where they're professionally managed based on the year that you plan to retire. So you don't need to make all these decisions as to which stock or which ETF I should purchase, or how do I blend a portfolio together. They're trying to make it as easy as possible for us with professional management. What we're trying to focus on, if you're going to be retiring and build a portfolio, take a look at your costs. Take a look at what's it costing you to invest in these type of retirement plans, and what investments they're using. That sometimes will make the biggest impact in a retirement portfolio.
Great. So our next question actually comes from a high school student. It's from Gabriel Agüero in Edwin O. Smith High School. And his question is, which aspect of financial literacy do you think is most important for youth to learn today? And could it be budgeting, about credit, investing? Which aspect is most important?
I will share with you, after 30 years of working in financial literacy, that I really think that the financial mindset, the behavioral choices that you make is the most important. They will predicate your spending habits. Wealth is nothing but a habit, right? It's just savings. And so again, do you have a short-term gratification type of mindset, a delayed gratification type of mindset? That will predicate how you use your money. With that being said, you want to get information not just about investing. Financial planning is not just about investing or budgeting or taxes or insurance. It's about all that stuff. So there's wonderful books out there. There's wonderful websites out there. Companies like Vanguard put out great information material that's more comprehensive. You want to get an overall a background, but I will share with you that the number one thing is save, and then also learn about investing for the long term. Please don't avoid kind of the day trading, the gambling type of mindset.
I think you're absolutely right about the mindset, Louis. And I think that is one of the hardest things for any of us to change, is that understanding that delaying gratification gets you more of what you want in the long term.
It is, Janet. And also what we want to do is we want to avoid that kind of gambling type of thing. The problem is when we don't know about investing, or we grew up or we've never heard about investing, is, again, we think that it's more of a gambling tool and investing is not. When people think of risk, they think about when the market's down one day, they think they've lost their money, when in reality they haven't. We call that volatility, not a loss, right? You lose money when you pull out when your investments are down. We want to have a really long-term perspective, and we really want to focus on saving. And so sometimes we have to make those difficult decisions. Do I spend this money now on having fun, or do I save some of it for the future? And it doesn't have to be either or. It could be and. You can just spend less money now and still save it, right? You can go on a nice trip, but it doesn't have to be a trip that's so expensive. You can still save a little bit of money. So we want to be able to have both.
So our next question comes from Karen Lewis. She is an artist at Native Hands, and she wants to know, how do you pay off the IRS without having to go homeless doing it?
Well, first of all, the IRS shouldn't make you go homeless, right? If you have debt because you haven't been filing your taxes, or you have not been withholding because you're self-employed, you really have to sit down with your tax preparer and really start thinking about how to be putting money away for what's happening now. If you have prior debt, you can call the IRS, and as long as you have that debt of $50,000 or less, the IRS will automatically grant you a payment plan for as long as up to 72 months, up to 6 years. So you take what you have divided by 72, if you can afford. But here's the thing, you don't want to let it go down to 72 years. You want to pay off your debt as quickly as possible. Now, what if you've had financial problems and you're not able to get out of that debt, and you've lost your job? Well, there are programs with the IRS called offers in compromise, where you can negotiate what you owe the IRS to pay down, sometimes cents on the dollar. If you actually don't have anything, you don't own a home, don't have equity, you can negotiate, and we've done it successfully with pennies on the dollar. So there are ways to not go homeless, and again, the IRS will not let you go homeless.
So our next question today comes from Olga Baez. She's the founder of Strive Higher Inc. And her question is, how can we encourage people to learn about financial literacy when they feel like they're barely making ends meet? And I understand that.
Well, I have, when I say privilege, I have the privilege that I work with people from underserved communities, and I have the privilege that I work with a lot of really famous, iconic, people in the entertainment industry. And I will share with you, Janet, that almost everybody seems to be living paycheck to paycheck. I know that sounds kind of weird, right? You've got people who make $30,000 a year who obviously live paycheck to paycheck. I've got people who, they're going to laugh, $1 million a year. When I meet with them, they're living paycheck to paycheck. At some point, we have to figure out, and people hate when I say this, that you can sacrifice a little bit more. Now, why do I say this? Not because I'm saying it, because I've worked with underserved communities for 30 years. I've worked with people who have not had any money or who have very little money, and we've been able to save, and we've been able to find, and it doesn't matter how much it is. It's a habit. It's building a habit, whether you're saving a dollar a day, $10 a month, $20 a month, it doesn't matter, that habit. Now, let me just share with you. If you make $30,000 a year and have $1,000 in the bank, you're wealthier than somebody who makes $100,000 a year and has more debt and nothing in the bank. Wealth is based on equity, not on income. So there are ways to do it. It's just, again, if you don't believe that, you're saying, well, Lewis doesn't understand my situation. I do. I've worked with hundreds of families who in barrios, in ghettos and whatever, and we've been able to save. And I work with people who also think that they can't because they're spending so much money. But again, there are ways to save, but you have to start with and believe that you can. If you have this why bother serenade in your head, why bother, I'm never going to be able to make it. You're right, you're never going to do anything. But at some point, you're the only one that's going to be able to save that money. I can't do it for you.
Yeah, I think a common theme in our conversation today has been about mindset focus and behavioral changes.
Right.
And so I think that goes into our next question. It's from Miguel Vargas. He's a personal assistant. And his question is, what do you think is the current trajectory of education as it refers to financial freedom and independence? And how can the increase of our collective consciousness promote a growth in generational wealth in our communities? And that's an interesting question from Miguel, because Lou, there's been a lot of conversation, a lot written about how Latino immigrant communities in many ways tend to have better financial habits than other communities in the United States, lower debt levels, it tends to be more entrepreneurial, higher savings rates through remittances and so forth. So how would you answer that question about collective consciousness and the growth of generational wealth in our communities?
Well, and we've been talking today about behavioral finance, right? But let me just show you, I work with a lot of immigrants that come here, and because they don't expect the government to take care of them, because they're not getting any kind of subsidies, most of them are not, and they're afraid, even if they are there, to apply, because they think that they're going to be sent back to their countries, right? If they're here, so they don't want to ask for money. They come in as very entrepreneurial. They're more risk takers. And so the collective consciousness that we have is that we've got to start getting away from looking at all the social media that's making us look like that we should be actually spending all our money on experiences right now and on driving these fancy cars and living in these nice homes. And so the thing is that we've got to start saving, but we also have to make sure that we are doing things that really do build multi-generational wealth. And sometimes it's just not the investing, it's making sure that we have life insurance. It's making sure that we've done an estate plan and we have a trust to make sure that if we pass away and we've saved to buy a home, that home can go to our children without spending all this money on legal fees through a probate process. So it's becoming more astute as to what little do we have that we can continue leaving to our children. But if we leave money to our children and we haven't educated them or built a proper financial foundation in their heads and in their hearts to save money for their families, then it's all for naught. We've got to teach our children also the responsibilities of all the work that we've done, that we're leaving them to leave their generations stronger and better, right? When it comes to the Latin community, for example, they always hear that we are the number one community that spends the most, and we add a lot of money to the economy. But the problem is that we never talk about that we have the most money saved. And really, to be quite honest with you, the people who have the most money have the most power. And one of the things that we want to do is we want people to save, and we want people to protect those savings, again, through life insurance, through estate planning, through proper tax planning. And we also have to make sure that we hire competent professionals to help us with that when we possibly can.
So our next couple of questions come from Crystal Goris. Her first question is, when making a career change, what's the best way to move your retirement account? I know that that's a common issue that a lot of people face, and especially right now as the economy is improving and people are switching jobs in record numbers. How do they move their retirement accounts?
This is the question of the day. I think this is the most important question. I lost my job, or I quit my job because I no longer could drive into the office. I had because of COVID, I had to take care of my kids. What do I do? So you can, if you had money in a 401k, for example, or a 403b plan, you can leave the money where it was at, And as long as it's sufficient enough, if you've got $5,000, $10,000, you can leave the money in there. You could transfer the money or roll it over to your new job, to your new 401k in which you're working. Sometimes what happens is that you have to wait at the new job for at least a year before you can participate. Let the money sit there for a year and you can move it over. Now, what's the benefit to that, Janet, is that if you still need to at some point even take a loan on that money, you can do that in that 401k. If you decide that you want to manage the money yourself, you can roll it over into an IRA, right? You can roll over to an IRA. And what some people do that I try not to get them to do is another option is they can pull the money out. But the problem if they pull the money out is that they're going to have to report that as income and then pay penalties on that money. The IRS will charge you 10% penalties if you pull the money out before age 59 and a half. Last year, we had an opportunity to pull some money out without those penalties because of the COVID rules. But this year, no longer. So we have to be really careful if you do pull the money out. And a lot of people don't know that. What they do is they'll take the money out and then they want to roll it over. If you decide to do that and you get a check, you have 60 days to make that transfer if you do that. So again, leave the money there, transfer to your new 401k, roll it over into an IRA, or pull the money out.
Yeah, a lot of people forget that if you have at least $5,000 in your account, in most cases, you can just leave it there. And that's something I've done personally and that I think has served me well, because sometimes when you move to a new employer, their retirement account offerings aren't as good as your old.
Well, what I also try to do is you have to make sure that, and again, because a lot of people have been job hopping actually the last several years. What we want is we also want to simplify the process if we possibly can, right? We don't want to have 4 or 5 401ks because they're very hard to watch. What you'd like to do is at some point simplify the whole process, and if you can have it in one, that's fine, or have it in a couple, because you still want to keep an eye on your investments, right? And so it's really complicated when you have 4 or 5. I've actually met people. I met one gentleman about 9 months ago that had 7 401ks, believe it or not, and I couldn't believe it. They had 2,001, 50,000, another $60,000. At the end of the day, we ended up consolidating all of those. It just made it a lot easier to plan for his retirement. So simplify the process when you possibly can. Don't complicate things.
So Crystal also wants to know about taxes. She wants to know what's the best, easiest way to itemize your taxes.
Well, again, they changed the laws a couple of years ago where if you're single, your deduction, basically, if you don't itemize, is $12,400, and if you're a married couple, it's like $28,000, right? So most people aren't itemizing these days. But what can you itemize? Well, most people can itemize medical expenses, but they haven't been able to take medical expenses in a long time because it's over a certain percentage of your adjusted gross income. So most people don't even itemize that. You can take your home mortgage interest, your property taxes, your charitable contributions. Those are the major itemized deductions that you can take on a tax return. If they're not over your standard deduction, then you're going to use the higher up, okay? But keep receipts. You want to keep receipts because if you do itemize and they do audit you, they're going to ask you for the receipts.
Just a couple of questions remaining today in our conversation, and thank you, Louis, for answering all of these so thoughtfully and thoroughly. And this one comes from Will K, and it's a topic that we've touched on already a little bit, but he specifically wants to know, what would you say are the best ways or specific resources for Hispanics or Latinos to get educated on finances?
I think this question leads to more if maybe I don't have the proficient language skills, right? If I don't really read in English, or I'm not learning because of things. There are programs. I've written a couple programs down. One is the FDIC, FDIC.gov. They have a wonderful platform for education on money, and it's in English and Spanish. And it's probably, Janet, the best Spanish program that I've seen in the country. It's called Money Smart Program. It's in English and Spanish. I've read through it. It's a thick book, but it's wonderful. Also, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or consumerfinance.gov. Consumerfinance.gov has financial literacy programs in English and Spanish. And I hate to say this, I'm going to tell my own horn. I wrote a book called The Latino Journey to Financial Greatness, which is written for Latinos in the U.S., right? The Latino Journey to Financial Greatness. And again, I have to, I'm doing a plug here for myself. I shouldn't do that. But the point is that those are the great places to go for financial literacy. And always think about where am I getting the information, and what is the author behind it trying to do? So.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And some other great resources I found, the SEC, the IRS websites all have excellent materials in Spanish language as well.
The Jumpstart Coalition has, believe it or not, jumpstart.org. They provide programs at high schools in English and Spanish, and they do phenomenal work as well on the communities.
Yeah, a lot of the major financial institutions too have excellent programs in Spanish. So really, there's a wealth of resources in Spanish available now, I've found. And then also our media partners at Telemundo.
Exactly.
Create a lot of excellent personal finance content in Spanish. That's a great starting point for anyone wanting to educate themselves.
Absolutely.
So our final question today, and I think this is a question that a lot of us have to grapple with, and none of us really want to deal with it because it's so emotional. It's about life insurance. And so Michael F. wants to know, when is the best time to think about buying life insurance? And I know you're going to say there's no time like the present, Louis, but are there specific things in life that really get you thinking about it?
Yeah, this is something that's near and dear to my heart because what happens, like for example, a lot of the communities that I work in, they use the insurance to actually sell kind of more investing with insurance. And I don't really like that idea for most people, right? For most people, I tell people, look, if someone is dependent upon your earnings while you're alive, someone's dependent, you need life insurance. That's really bottom line why you need life insurance. If I die today, who depends? If my wife is home taking care of my 2 young children, I need life insurance, and I need a lot of life insurance. And if I buy term insurance, I can basically, it'll cost me very little, right? So anybody, and that's the reason why. So if nobody's dependent upon you, you don't need life insurance. Now, don't get caught up in the whole thing when somebody tries to tell you, well, the younger that you are, the less expensive insurance is going to be. It doesn't matter. Term insurance is not that expensive, even if when you're 20s and 30s and 40s. But again, it's only when there's a need. You may want to buy life insurance, that's different, but the need is someone is depending upon your income and get if you die prematurely. So what I try to do is I try to get families that have younger children a term policy until the kids are maybe 24, until they're out of college. After that, usually, hopefully you've been putting money away over those years through your 401k and your spouse, and you can have some level of financial independence.
How do you feel about, for example, universal life insurance and cash value of insurance as an investment? I know it's a very conservative investment, generally speaking. It's something that you would generally advise clients that are less affluent, immigrant communities.
Let me just tell you, so it's neither good nor bad, right? And every insurance has its proper use. There are no good investments, there are no bad investments. It depends on the individual and their situation. So that's why it's really important to understand that there's no one solution for everything. I believe that maybe everyone should have a small policy for long-term, because again, a term policy will end at a specific time period, right? It might end after 15, 20, 30 years. You may still need life insurance after that, but what happens when you're older? You may have diabetes, you may have a heart condition, you may not be insurable, and you still may need an extra $100,000 or $200,000. So you might want to get a cash value policy that's more of a permanent policy. But I will share with you that for most people with young children who live on tight budgets, they need a lot of life insurance, and cash value insurances are rather expensive. And you're prepaying for your years now, and then they end up letting those policies go. So if they're going to get a policy like a cash value policy, get a small one that they may need after the fact for maybe death expenses, maybe paying off a mortgage down the road. But term is what I always recommend. Now, for wealthier people who've maxed out their 401ks, already have a lot of term insurance, those type of policies may work. But again, every person is different and every situation is different.
Luis, muchísimas gracias por esta conversación hoy.
Igualmente, siempre un placer estar con todos here. Yeah, I love helping people out, and whenever I'm available, I'm here for you guys. Thank you so much.
And thank you all for joining us today for this Facebook Live. If you'd like to learn more about the topics we discussed today or watch the replay of our digital town hall with Secretary Cardona, please head to cnbc.com/invest in you. You can also sign up for Money 101 newsletter, which will soon be available in Spanish at cnbc.com/Money 101. I'm Janet Alvarez for CNBC and Acorns. Y mil gracias.